Okay, so in the previous videos, we've gone through and installed CentOS 7. We've encrypted the disk and added some extra security by, applying some IP tables rules to that. We've also changed some of the SSH rules to make it a little bit more secure, and are now able to log into our CentOS 7 install using SSH keys instead of password-based authentication. So in this guide, we are actually ready to go ahead and install Ripple, which is fairly easy to do. Ripple has an online guide that they've set up with pretty straightforward to follow steps. It's got steps for Debian-based or Ubuntu distributions, as well as Cent distributions. If you're on Windows or something like that, obviously you haven't been following the guide up to this point, but you're welcome, of course, to use Ripple's Git and compile the RippleD instance, from their Git. So we're going to go ahead and SSH into the laptop here, or into the server here. So we're going to SSH rabbit path, and I need the server's IP address here. Alright, and it didn't ask us for a password, of course, because we're using SSH keys, which we set up in the previous video. So we are going to go ahead and I'm going to change over so that I have administrative privileges to go ahead and install this software and get it configured and running. Okay, so that's done. So we're just going to go ahead and install the RippleD repository here. So they've got some code for that. We're going to omit, we don't need the sudo there because I'm doing sudo I. So we're going to go ahead and add that repo. So that just adds, Ripple runs a software repository, with the RippleD software in it, and it'll use that repository to keep it up to date, do all that kind of stuff. So we're going to use that repository right now to go ahead and install the RippleD software. Okay, that went well. So we've got the RippleD software installed now. I'm going to go over here and I am actually going to download a basic configuration file from my GitHub. You are welcome to use this as well. It's just in the server configuration repository there. So we're going to use wget, and we are going to use the output option to save that to home, rabbit, and rippled.cfg. Get it from there and download that. So the configuration file, this is not the default configuration file. I'll actually grab that here real fast. It's really well commented. So we're going to copy that just so we have a copy of it from etc. opt ripple, and that is rippled.cfg, and we're going to copy that to home, rabbit, and we'll call it rippled default.cfg. Or you know what, we're going to just call it rippled.cfg.bu so that it's easier. So we'll take a look at that, ripple. Okay, so now we're in the RippleD configuration file, the default file. This is, like I said, really well commented. It goes through all of the different sections here. So basically this is set up so that you can identify different connections coming into the server, right? So you can have different ports specified for different protocols, ways of accessing the server. We'll go through that in a minute. I encourage you to really read through this default configuration file so that you can get a sense of the different settings and what's going to work best for you. So we'll go ahead and edit our custom configuration file now. So basically in this file we've got several different parts here. Starting at the top, we've got different server settings. The port, RPC admin local port, is going to be used to run commands using the command line against the Ripple validator there. So that's set up using the loopback interface's IP address, HTTP. You can install an SSL key and certificate here if you wanted to, if you had one. I typically use a VPN to run commands, pass commands to the server. So I don't bother with this myself at the moment. I'm not going to worry about it for this install at least. I'm also going to keep this WebSocket port disabled, for the time being, because we don't want people being able to run administrative commands, or really any commands against the validator at this point in time. That will come in a later video. Port peer, I'm going to leave this so that it's monitoring for the peer protocol on any IP address. So the reason I'm going to leave this set to the intranet and internet and intranet interfaces is because in a future video we're going to actually cluster it with another node. So it's going to need to be able to talk to that node using the intranet interface, and it's going to need to be able to talk to the broader Ripple network using the internet interface. Port 51235 is the default port that Ripple runs on. We're going to leave the node size set to tiny, and then if we have enough RAM left over, we can make that medium, large, or I think huge are the options. Double check that in the default configuration file. So this validators file here goes to the list of validators that we're actually going to trust. I really encourage you to leave this set to the 5 validators that Ripple runs until Ripple's ready to decentralize the network. At that time, it could be a good choice to move to trust other validators as needed. But until then, it makes sense not to go off and do your own thing, right? So that you can stay in sync with the rest of the network, and stay in good consensus with the network. There's some database settings there, so just leave those set as is for now. You can look those up in the configuration file that's commented, the default file. The path to that, we're going to set up a debug file, a log file here, in the var directory. Specify some network time servers, so we've got those there. Node seed and cluster nodes we're going to come back to in a future video when we're clustering 2 nodes together. The IPS here is where RippleD, your local, the RippleD running on your server can find the Ripple ledger. So you can use r.ripple.com, to fetch the Ripple ledger, copies of the Ripple ledger. And as your node connects to the network, it'll naturally find other nodes in the network that are nearby and download the ledger from them. We've also left port 51235 open on our node, so others on the network connect into our node as well. Pure private, we're going to leave that set to 0. That basically means that our IP address will be passed along to the network. And SSL verified, that would go with the SSL certificates, making sure they chain up. Under this we have voting, so the reference fee, account reserve, and owner reserve, so we're going to leave those set as is. If you wanted to change the default amount, right now it's 20 XRP. These values are all in drops. It's 10 drops to send a transaction minimum on the network. 10 drops gets destroyed for every transaction. If you wanted to vote for that to be higher, you could change that, or adjust that if you were running a validator. This isn't actually going to be a validator, so our vote doesn't matter, so I'm going to go ahead and comment out the voting section here as well. So now we're ready to start RippleD. And we'll make sure it's enabled too, so it starts every time with the system. And you can see when we check the status of it that RippleD is up and running. I'm going to use htop as well and go in there and check it out. And you can see there's all of our RippleD processes running right up top there. Notice too that out of our 8 gigs, it's already using about 3 gigs, so RippleD really is a memory hog. We'll let this go ahead and sync with the network, which it's doing right now. And when it's done syncing with the network, we can decide if we want to go ahead and make our node a little bit bigger because we're going to have some extra RAM on this particular machine. So I'm going to go ahead and let that sync. At this point, you should have a fully functional and secure RippleD instance running. And in the next video, we'll talk about clustering that with another node so that we can start setting up a validator. See you then. Bye.